Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Zeidema of the International Christian Maritime Association. Today, I have with me from London, UK, Katie Higginbottom, who is the head of the ITF Seafarers Trust, and from Queensland in Australia, Dennis Treleaven, who is Maritime Program Officer at the TK Foundation. Welcome to you both.
Hi. Hi, Jason.
So, if it's possible, could both of you describe the organizations that you work for, and then say something about why putting funds forward, emergency funds forward, to help in this coronavirus situation was so important? Katie, if we could start with you.
Sure, thanks, Jason. So the ITF Seafarers Trust is a grant-making organisation associated with the International Transport Workers Federation. We had an emergency trustees meeting a couple of weeks ago to basically look at how we can prioritise our response to the COVID-19 emergency. And we wanted to put aside a sizable amount of cash that would be readily available so that we can respond to particular issues that seafarers are facing, but also to be able to respond to the challenges faced by welfare providers, services, who, because of the impact of the crisis, are having real difficulties with their fundraising or have some kind of issue with their business model that means that there could be a risk that they wouldn't survive beyond the crisis. And we and our trustees would really like to avoid that. And so we've put this fund aside. It's £1 million, which is on the one hand quite a lot, but on the other hand, not so much if we're looking globally. So we want to be as focused as possible on what makes an impact for seafarers and what will help you carry on with your services going forward after the crisis is over, hopefully. I'll stop
Dennis,
there.
Dennis, from your part, can you describe similarly what's the TK Foundation, and why are you putting forward emergency grants at this time?
Yeah, well, the TK Foundation has been in existence for a number of years now and grew out of our founder, Torben Karlsrøy, and some of your viewers may know the TK Shipping Company that he founded some years ago. We exist to support seafarers around the world, and we do that through making, as a grant-making organization. I think last year we made something like $11 million in grants to various organizations around the world. Similar to the ITF Seafarers Trust, we are acutely aware that at the moment, during the COVID-19 crisis, there are a number of organizations, particularly seafarer centres and organizations providing temporary accommodation for seafarers and welfare services to seafarers, that have really suffered a dramatic and sizable drop in their income or dramatic increase in the services that are being demanded of them. And we've set up a fund. We haven't set a figure for it because we feel that we will just continue to fund projects as we see necessary to support those organizations. The grants will be mainly for the next 3 or 4 months to help organizations that would otherwise be at risk of closing or are actually seeking to provide new services to support seafarers during the current crisis.
So as you put these funds in place, there might be many different leaders of seafarers welfare centers around the world listening clearly for what the priorities would be in those funding, in the funding you put in place. If I can start with Dennis and then go to Katie, what are some of the key problems you want to solve and the priorities you have in funding them?
I think the key is in the title. It's an emergency fund. It's for organizations that are in dire need because usually the seafarer centre may have had to close, so its main income has ended, or it might be unable to do fundraising because of the country's in lockdown or whatever. So it is about providing that immediate relief for the next few months until hopefully the situation with the COVID-19 will start to resolve itself. And that's why we're saying that our grants are those emergency, short-term. We're not being specific in terms of what the money is used for beyond that it's used to maintain the organization, the Seafarers Centre or the Seafarers Organization, over the next few months. And then at the end of that period, we may well then talk about what's needed to get everyone back on the road.
Katie, from your side?
I think from our side, we're a bit more focused on maintaining service provision. So I think we're really interested in supporting people with initiatives to either maybe improve communication facilities for seafarers so they can keep in contact with their families, or some of the centres and some of the brilliant people going out there and managing to leave provisions on gangways and do kind of run errands for seafarers. I just read your article, Jason. It's really heartwarming to hear that there's so many things still going on, even in this kind of time of lockdown and real restrictions, even more than usual. So although I think our aims are kind of in the same space with the TK Foundation, we would be a bit more focused on what's going to actually right now have an immediate impact on the lives of seafarers in this current situation.
Yeah, I think the worst thing that we would want to see is in 6 months' time, a whole bunch of seafarer centres that have had to close temporarily are unable to reopen. I think that would be a disaster for seafarers, and it's something that we are definitely seeking to prevent where possible.
So as you're looking for applications from people, can you two questions that might come up that they might want to understand better? What's the sort of the emergency part of it when they're applying? How do they frame it correctly? And the other one is the time length. What would be the optimal or the sort of the when you're looking for sort of temporary funding? How many months are we talking about in your view? Do either of you have comments on either of those questions?
Yeah, sure. So I think what we're looking at the kind of immediate situation. So we're looking currently around 3 months, but we wouldn't be against coming back after 3 months. And if we're still in the situation or if things have changed, I think everything is changing in some ways so fast, and in other ways not fast enough for seafarers who are stranded and not able to change their situation. But we want to be responsive. And I think, you know, part of the reason for setting up a COVID emergency fund is to allow people like myself and Dennis working within grant-making organisations to be able to respond quickly. So we've been able to set up a different process that's much more immediate, not entirely immediate, but closer than normal, a bit more sort of streamlined. And what I guess what we want people to do is not think, oh, good, here's another funding opportunity. Let's pluck something out of the air that we can think of to apply for. What we're looking for is people who are thinking, God, I wish I could have been able to do this. If I just had a bit of cash, I could continue this service in this way, or I could still get to the vessels, or I wouldn't be in this dire situation. It's those kind of situations where we want to be able to respond to that and help out.
I think I would agree with pretty much everything that Katie said there. I think we haven't put a definite time limit on it, but we are thinking in the 3, at the most up to maybe 4 months in terms of revenue support. I think we will revisit that in a few months' time. I think we're saying that on the basis that we are hoping that we'll be closer to the light at the end of the tunnel by then. At least we'll have a much clearer idea of how things are starting to pan out. Because obviously the situation is very different in different countries, with some still climbing that graph and others coming down the other side of it. So there's a bit of suck it and see. We'll have to see how things are in 3 months' time. But I would certainly suggest that that would be the sort of timeline that organisations should be thinking about if they're thinking of submitting an application.
Now, both of your organizations have this funding available, but in various press releases I've seen from the Trust and in other statements, it seems there's some kind of collaboration between your organizations. Can you tell me a bit about the collaboration? If I could start with Katie and then have a comment from Dennis. What does that collaboration look like? Do people need to apply twice, etc.? How do they do that?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously we wanted to work together and be able to provide the most effective and fair possibility for people to apply to. So we have we've liaised over what the application form looks like. We've liaised over what kind of information we're going to ask from people, so that we can basically use our applications interchangeably. So people don't have to apply twice. You can apply either or, and we're constantly consulting about what's coming in and what we're thinking. And if things slightly fit the remit of TK more than the trust, we would probably talk to Dennis about that, and the other way back from his perspective. So sometimes, as Dennis has said, we're doing 50-50. I think I would say that in general, we always like to try and promote more coordination and more cooperation and more collaboration, whether it's between grant makers or the recipients. So so it's kind of, it's fairly loose to be responsive, but it's it involves kind of pretty constant communication, I would say.
Yes, certainly we're emailing each other almost on a daily basis here with applications to see whether this one fits your criteria better than our criteria, and it is a fluid situation. We are, it's a new crisis. We've never faced anything like this before, so we're talking about where we are at the moment, but things might change in a few weeks' time, and clearly we need to recognize that both organizations have their own, I have my directors, Katie has her trustees, and things can change. But at the moment, it's about collaboration, cooperation. On some occasions, already we've been able to make some joint grants between the two of us where we've had a request and we've split it 50-50 because it met both our criteria very neatly. So that might happen again in the future, or it might be that individual organizations will pick off things that are more appropriate to our own criteria.
And last question is about the how to apply in both of your organizations. The two questions: one, sort of how to apply in general, but then specifically, are people allowed to email you first and ask you questions and get feedback before they have to apply, or can they only get that feedback after they've been rejected? How does that work?
Yes, please email me. If you go to the TK Foundation website, you'll see my email address there. I'm happy to answer questions about whether, if you have an idea for a project that's related to the crisis, or a need for funds that's related to the crisis, then by all means drop me an email, and I'll respond as quickly as I can. If you need an application form, then you need to email me, and we have the TK Foundation has produced its own COVID-19 crisis emergency grants form, which I'll send out to you, which is deliberately designed so that the information on that form, I can, if it's not relevant to us, I can pass it over to ITF because it asks similar questions. So that's the best way of contacting me. Sorry.
So from the trust side, if you go straight to the ITF Seafarers Trust website, you will see on the front page the information about the COVID-19 Welfare Fund and a link into the online application form. If you've already applied to the trust for a grant before, your kind of organisational details will already be in there, so that should make it easier. If not, you can just register and complete this, which is effectively a simplified grant application form. Again, feel free to email us if you've got questions in advance. We won't hold it against you if you make speculative applications. We'd really like to encourage innovation and good initiatives. But at the same time, we also want to be fair and consistent and effective. So we're going to, some things we'll kind of think, well, in other times maybe we would have done this, but right now this isn't the purpose of this fund. So so don't hold back. But the only other thing I would say is that, of course, we're also in touch with the head offices of Mission to Seafarers, of Stella Maris, of Sailor Society, Ice One, the community. So where it's appropriate, we would welcome some coordination from HQ or from your regional structures, whatever works for you. We're not kind of dictating that, but we don't want to create any internal problems in your organisations either. So so it's kind of flexible, but keep conversations going and contact us, and we'll try and adapt to good things and keep things going.
Well, Katie Higginbottom, head of the ITF Seafarers Trust, and Dennis Treleaven, Maritime Program Officer at the TK Foundation. Thank you so much for your time and for speaking with us today. And I wish you all the best. Please pass on our regards as well to the rest of your staff and your trustees, your directors. It's really encouraging to hear from them, to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for all you're doing.